Okay. Good morning, all. We can continue our book reading this morning. Advanced Selling Strategy by Brian Tracy. We'll continue from where we stopped yesterday. 5 errors to avoid when closing sales. We looked at the 5 common errors that salespeople may make in the course of a sales conversation that can derail or destroy a sale, even for the most qualified prospect. Today, we're looking at obstacles to closing on page 390. On page 390, still in chapter 10, closing the sales, the end game of selling. An important reason sales people fail to make sales is negative expectation. These occur when the salesperson makes a negative prejudice or prejudgment of the prospect. He decides that the prospect isn't really going to buy and that he's just wasting his time. He overreacts to the prospect's questions about price or about the capability of the product to do what he says it will do. The salesperson loses heart. The energy and the conviction go out of his sales presentation. As he gets towards the end of the meeting, he has already given up on this prospect and his mind is on what he's going to do after the sales call. The antidote to this thinking trap is to always assume the prospect is going to buy. Don't be put off by his questions, complaints, or objections. Continue being pleasant and cheerful and focus on him and his situation. Talk to him about himself, the problems he is facing. Rise above any negative signal that the prospect gives off. At the very least, be neutral and easygoing. Selling has been defined as a transfer of enthusiasm. The sale takes place when the enthusiasm you feel for your product is transferred into the mind and the heart of the prospect. It is like an electric arc. The more power and conviction there is behind your belief and enthusiasm for what you're selling, the more the energy acts from you into the prospect. When your prospect becomes as enthusiastic as your product as you are, the sales is made. One of the top salespeople I know is blind, having lost his eyesight in an auto accident after he began selling, but he didn't feel sorry for himself and he didn't give up. When he got out of the hospital, he went back to work. He had his secretary dial his calls for him. Even though he couldn't see, he could still talk and interact with his clients, setting up his appointments and arranging to see people. When he went out to see a prospect, his secretary would go along to guide him. She would position him in front of the prospect and sit off to the side. Because he was blind, he just assumed that the prospect was happy to see him and eager to buy his product. He spoke with excitement, enthusiasm, and conviction. If the prospect objected or asked questions, he assumed that these were simply observation on his product, and he answered them positively and completely. Okay. He would then go on to ask for the order. The secretary reported that in many cases, the prospects were not particularly interested. Their body language and facial expressions were negative. They looked at their watches and glanced away, tapped their fingers, and even signed their mails. But the blind salesman couldn't see his prospect, so he continued talking exactly as if the prospect was eagerly hanging on every word. Eventually, his enthusiasm and conviction wore them down, and they bought. The second obstacle to closing is lack of sincerity. This happens whenever a salesperson is thinking more about the sales and the commission than he is about the prospect and his situation. Prospects can pick up a lack of sincerity across a crowded room. The instant you begin thinking about what is in it for you rather than what is in it for him, the prospect will sense that he is like a canary in a cage and are like a cat on the outside, salivating and thinking about how good he will taste. The prospect will turn off to you immediately and lose all interest in your product and presentation. The third common obstacle to selling takes place when you and your prospect are on different wavelengths. For some reasons, you don't seem to communicate. It may be because you have different backgrounds, different levels of education, different interests of philosophy. You may have a different personality, style, and orientation towards life and people. When you find yourself in a situation with qualified prospects with whom you do not seem able to connect, instead of pressing forward and trying to make the sales regardless, you should have the maturity to back off. Don't ruin the prospect for your company. Turn the prospect over to someone else who may be better attuned to him. Say, Mr. Prospect, you have a unique situation that I think our company can really help you with. I would like to get an expert in this area to talk to you and see if we can help you achieve your goals. The prospect will be flattered and the relationship will be saved. You then go back to the office and get another salesperson who you feel will communicate better with this prospect and send him or her back. You'll be amazed at how many sales you can save this way. And if everybody in your company engages in this form of reciprocity, you will all do better than you would by trying to force a sales on an unwilling prospect. The fourth block to closing sale is often a personality clash between you and the prospect. A basic rule in selling is that you cannot sell to a person you don't like, and the prospect cannot buy from you until he likes you. He won't buy until he is genuinely convinced that you are his friend and that you are there to help him. If these conditions don't exist, no sales will take place, no matter how qualified the prospect or how appropriate your product. If you find that you don't particularly like a prospect for some reasons, don't blame the prospect or take it personally. It happens. Throughout your life, you meet an enormous number of people with whom you don't get along with. You will meet people you don't particularly like in selling as well. But if the prospect seems to be a good candidate for your product or service, break up the conversation gracefully and make every effort to save the prospect from someone else in your company. Have other people in your company do the same thing for you. One company I worked with increased their sales 30% the very first month they instituted a new policy that called for 2 salespeople to see every prospect before giving up on him. It was amazing how many prospects were open to buying from one person while being closed to another. So this is your stop for our reading today. Obstacles to closing. So an important reason or an important factor why sales people fail at closing sales is negative expectation. When you're thinking maybe the prospect will not buy, maybe when you have negative thoughts or overreacting and stuff like that, when you're already losing hope that maybe this prospect is going to buy, or when you have doubt in your mind, all these are negative expectations. So this is one of the obstacles to closing sales. The second obstacle to closing sales is lack of sincerity. Maybe because you're desperate to make sales and you're desperate to, like, you know, sell your product out and the rest kind of thing. You tend to lie about the kind of things your products will do. You tend to lie about your products, their future. You lie about the benefits. You lie about everything. You're not being sincere about it. Then the third common obstacles to selling is when you have a different wavelength. Maybe when you do not know how to communicate with the prospect or with the client because you're on different levels, or you have different interests. He's saying something else and you're saying another thing. You know, it's better you just back off and turn that prospect to someone in your company who will be able to help that prospect, or talk to him personally and be able to communicate with him on the same level which that prospect is. Then the fourth block to closing the sales is personality clash. Like I said here, you cannot sell to a person that you don't like, or you cannot buy from a person that you don't like. If you don't like somebody, you will not want to buy from that person. If someone doesn't like you, he or she will not like to buy from you, or will not like to do business with you. Why? Maybe because there's something you've noticed, or there's something you've observed in the person's personality that you don't like, and you know you can't deal with, and stuff like that. So all these are personality clash. In this case too, what you do is to look for someone in your company who will be able to relate with this person in a more efficient and effective way. So that's just a brief summary of our reading this morning. Thank you.